After 1,000 years of peace, Dragul armies raided from the north, prompting you and every other loyal citizen of Nalos to sign up as soldiers of the King's Guard. The armies of Nalos fought long and hard against the North's monstrous generals and their minions, finally stemming the tide of the Dragul invasion. But new threats have arisen that jeopardize all of Ulos. A mysterious cult prepares for the return of an ancient god. The long-abandoned gate at Brazor Wall, a portal between planes, rumbles with new life. Strange rifts appear in the sky, unleashing bizarre creatures into your world. Dragul invaders seek to exploit this instability to conquer Nalos. As a humble soldier of the King's Guard, you are called away from your regiment on a special mission that will allow you to uncover the secrets of your world. You will discover powerful artifacts and meet members of the cult working to unearth them. You will confront Dragul warriors and discover the motives behind their invasion. And you will encounter strange beings from other planes who threaten to disrupt the very fabric of your universe.
Hello everyone and welcome to the One Stop Co-op Shop. This is Colin.
And Monica.
And today we have a treat for you. We're going to do Chapter 1 of Role Player Adventures. So technically Monica and I are on Adventure 7 right now. We played over the weekend and just couldn't stop. It was so much fun. But we wanted to show you at least the first chapter so you can see how the game plays. I do want to mention this is a spoilery playthrough, so we're going to spoil Chapter 1 for you. The advantage is that Chapter 1 is pretty standard. Once you move out of Chapter 1, though, lots of new things occur that can change on the story based upon your decisions. I do also want to mention we will be playing with the expansion. Not that it's going to matter for Chapter 1. We will have backstories, though, and we will read a little bit about each of our backstories before we start. But in the first adventure, none of you will have an encounter that deals with your backstory in Adventure 1, so we won't have to worry about spoiling that. But just to show you kind of the flavor that that expansion provides. So without further ado, let's jump in and do our setup and start our playthrough. When you start your campaign, you're going to want to grab the party journal here. You'll want to grab 5 gold coins. You start out with no XP. You'll start at the 0 slot and all of the 3 different favor types. There's the King's favor, the Starlit Door favor, and the Dragul favor. They are the 3 different factions that you will be interacting with throughout the campaign. You'll grab your rest token, and your rest token has an exhausted and an unexhausted side. We have a space for our keywords. We are playing with 1 bonus play because we are playing as a 2-player game. You'll get different amounts of bonus plays dependent upon player count. Up here, we have written in that our play limit, that's the amount of cards we can play from our hand for each combat round or each skill check, is 2. If you're playing, let's say, solo, if you played with 1 character, that play limit would be 4. If you're playing with 4 players, that play limit would be 1. So that all depends upon the player count. Combat dice limit is always 3, so we've placed that in there, and we're all set to go here. This is your campaign track. As you complete adventures, you will check those off. And of course, if you die, you will be checking off your death track. And if you get to the 10, yeah, I don't know what happens, but probably not anything good. Now let's take a look at our 2 characters that we have. We are using 2 pre-generated characters, but if you would like, you can actually play role player with any of the expansions, do an entire game, and then import that character into the game. However, we are just going to use pre-gens since we're only doing scenario 1. I am going to be Bexar Theros. He's a Bastia Soothsayer. And on the back side of the card, it shows you where you place their stats. So you can see here the strength is 0, dexterity is 0, my constitution is 3, intelligence is 2, wisdom is 2, and charisma is 1. If you have the expansion, you'll also see what backstory you can use. We'll be using Haunted for Bastia. And what Keith recommends is if you're playing with just 2 characters, you can actually grab 2 backstories. However, since we're only doing this scenario, we're only going to use 1 backstory, the Haunted backstory. So what I've done here is you can see I have 0 strength, 0 constitution. There's nothing in this row. But with constitution, since I have 3 here, I actually have 3 tokens there to denote that my level of constitution is 3. Intelligence is 2, wisdom is 2, charisma is 1. Then for my class ability, I have Soothsayer. I am Judicious. Return 2 stamina from your Constitution attribute row to the supply to increase all the dice in the dice pool by 1 or decrease them by 1, which is really cool. With pre-generated characters, you always start at 16 health. And then on the back side here, it tells you which cards you start with. Everyone starts with 7 different cards. So I will have a weapon, the spiked club. I have the armor, the skills, and the trait cards denoted here. If you've played Role Player at all, these cards will look somewhat similar to those, but they do different things. I'm not going to explain all of them now. We will go through them as we use them during the playthrough. Just know you have the same types of armor, skill, traits, all those types, weapon cards, and they're all going to help you to manipulate dice throughout the game. Because we are playing with the expansion, we also get to read our backstory. So this is slightly spoilery. However, if you used the haunted backstory, you'd read this right when you started. You have attracted the notice of a dark denizens of the underworld. When you are in need of help, you hear its infernal whispers and promise of power. Long ago, when you still had pleasant dreams, you whisper a quiet prayer as the other children toss a shovel of dirt into your coffin. They thought it would be funny to bury you. You cry out for help, but the children continue their game. Unexpectedly, the muffled laughter above you falls silent and the lock on the coffin breaks open. The children have scattered. Ezrat, you hear a voice whisper from below. That is the name of the one who answers your prayers. Remember it well. You continue to hear Ezrat's voice in times of need. At first, your parents think it's cute that you have an imaginary friend, but after a third of your bullies mysteriously disappear, they forbid you from speaking her name. The only person who believes your stories is a woman you met in the marketplace with a strange, serpent-like face. We all serve masters, she warns. Choose yours carefully. So the haunted player, which is me, we're going to have to decrease our wisdom attribute score by 1. Okay, so our wisdom's going to go down by 1 right off the get-go, but we're going to increase our health by 2. So remember, my health was at 16. My health will actually be at 18. Then what we need to do is record these adventure numbers and locations on our backstory board, which I'll show you in a second. This means that these different locations we can go to in these adventures, and we learn more about our backstory itself. So in Adventure 4, when Location F is revealed, we can go there and actually have an encounter that deals with our backstory. Really kind of cool. As you can see, I have decreased my wisdom now down to 1. I only have 1 token here to denote that, but my health is 18 instead of 16. Here we have our backstory board, and you can see if you've played Role Player, the regular game, you will remember the alignment board. So that's kind of what you're using here is your alignment board. You start right in the center. How you know what color to use, you can see on the back, Seuss there is green, so that's why we use the green one. They do recommend, especially if you're using the pre-generated characters, every character has to be a different class color. Otherwise, you might have issues with cards where you start with the same cards as a different character. I have put down the different adventure marks as well as the locations here so that I remember when these will happen. I have put my haunted up here so I remember what my backstory is. Now, you're probably not going to see this anymore because, like I said, as you can see, there's no Adventure 1 here, so we're not going to have any backstory encounters in this scenario.
Today I will be playing Tass Willowbark, who is a Shiki and has the class of Seeker. Below you can see the starting stats that Tass Willowbark starts with. She has strength of 3, dexterity of 2, no constitution, 1 intelligence, and 2 wisdom. As a Seeker, Tass Willowbark is connected. This allows her to draw and roll a random die and then place it in the fatigue box. I can then exchange a die in the dice pool for a die in the fatigue box without changing the value. And here are some of the cards that Tass Willowbark starts with. As Colin said before, we'll explain more about what each of these cards does later as we use them. Tass Willowbark has the backstory Transported. You've often dreamt of another world. After encountering an old croon and drinking her root tea, you find yourself transported to the dream world of your mind. This world is not your own, and you seek passage back to where you belong. Many years ago. Drink, the old woman says. Out of politeness, you oblige. After a few sips, the world melts away. The old woman is reduced to a jumble of colors and shapes. In her garden, a new vision comes into focus. A black-haired queen with several green rabbits, whose fur resembles blades of grass, cowering at her feet. You have come, she shouts happily. Everyone here, even the rabbits, were once dreaming mortals just like you. Now they are part of my kingdom. Stay alive and you will join them. A hooded figure stands behind her. I will remain to observe, the stranger announces. The queen frowns. Who am I to say no to the goddess of judgment? You detect a hint of jealousy in her voice. As the years pass, you pay many visits to the queen's kingdom. Though accessed only when you sleep, her realm exists independent of your mind. It is as real as the waking world, and just as treacherous. And then down below, it shows each of the adventures and the locations where the backstory for Taswilla Bark will be continued.
We've now completed setup. We have all of our dice in our dice bag here, and we are set to go. So our first adventure is the battle at Blacklake. How you start the game is simply opening up the book and starting to read. We can see here we get a nice intro. It tells us that symbols that have this exclamation point here, we have to follow them. And we've already completed the campaign setup. Each book will have a setup for that specific book. You can see here we need to place the adventure map on the board. We already did that. We've placed the Battle at Blacklake adventure map in the center of the table. Then we place 1 XP on each lettered location that's on the adventure map, which is A, B, C, and D. We've placed the bonus play tokens on our party journal equal to the recorded value, which is 1. We've done the full setup for our character sheets. There are encounter tokens, and you place a certain amount based upon the adventure out on the board. For this specific adventure, we only place 1 and 2. I randomly set them out on the board, and then our adventure begins. As a King's Guard soldier in the regiment of Commander Zalek, a dark elf, you have fought a long war. The Dragul, a coalition of northern tribes, invaded Nalos, your homeland. After many battles, you have driven off their hordes, but rumors spread through the camp of a new Dragul plot. One night, you are summoned to Commander Zalek's tent, where you find him arguing over a map with General Grick, an orc. A gold coin marks the southern city of Sebek. A vial of elixir marks a swamp to the west. General Grick raises an eyebrow when you enter. "So, you're Zalek's best?" he asks, looking you over skeptically. "We have a special mission for you, but first a question of strategy. Zalek wants to take your regiment south to investigate a threat to the capital," says Grick, pointing to the coin, then pointing to the vial. "I think we should push west and capture a powerful Dragul agent in the swamps. What say you?" So now we have 2 question marks here, and we have a choice. We can either side with General Grick and learn more about the Dragul plots, or we can side with Commander Zalek and investigate threats to the capital. So what do you think, Monica? Do we want to side with General Grick or Zalek?
You're pretty rebellious, so I guess we're going to side with General Grick.
I like that. Grick sounds cool. He's an orc anyways. You point to the vial of elixir, and General Grick laughs, patting you on the back. "Yes, exactly," he says. Zalek nods. "I'll leave you to it," he says. He collects his coin and exits the tent. The action indicator below instructs you to record a keyword. To do this, write the keyword Grick in the keyword space of your party journal. On the party map, there's a space for us to place keywords. Now, in this game, keywords, every time you play an adventure, you're going to erase all the keywords and start over. That's different than the titles, which we'll be placing here, and those titles will stay for the rest of the campaign. A nice way to give you variety of things that affect the scenario you're playing versus things that affect your entire campaign.
You can keep the vial, the general says to you, rolling up the map. You'll need it where you're going. Leave now and travel due east until you reach a small enemy encampment. A special operative of King Tehran will meet you there. You collect the elixir from the table and drink it down. With a nod, the general sends you forth. With that, we get to gain 1 XP, which will be super useful at the end of the scenario. You make haste under a crescent moon, crossing burnt and abandoned farmland into an open prairie. At the top of a bluff, you look out over a dark lake to a wooden outpost.
So we can see here we have to place our party marker at location A and then read entry A. But before that, we'll gain our 1 XP. So just like Monica alluded to, XP you can use at the end of each adventure to level up. You can level up your stats, you can level up the bonus plays, the combat dice. The other thing you can do with XP during the adventure is rest. Whenever you do a rest action, you'll have to spend at a minimum of 1 XP. The more XP you use, the more dice you can roll to heal fatigue. And we'll show you how fatigue works as we play. Location A is Bourline Prairie. We can see here it talks about the action indicators are always read and resolved in order from top to bottom. Sometimes an action indicator will direct you to another entry. When this happens, you immediately turn to that entry without reading or resolving any more of the action indicators. So you can see here it says if there's no more XP at this location, we go to A1. There is XP at that location, so what we'll do is we'll move past that. Otherwise, collect the XP from this location and continue reading. This will be our second XP that we've now earned, and now if we ever come back here, we'll read A1 instead of A. As you look out over the lake, a voice calls from a thicket behind you. Care to join me? You turn to discover a friendly halfling roasting apples in a hare by his fire. You look like you could use a meal. You disregard the halfling and he chuckles, then stands to salute you. Tarek Nalin, special operative of King Turan, confidant of the immortal knight and bearer of bad news and terrible secrets. Now come, eat and rest, for we have hard work ahead of us. As you eat, Tarek speaks in a hushed voice. The lake below is dark, for the Dragul filled it with blood and ashes of their dead. Our mission is to secure the outpost. The northern shore is guarded by an encampment of goblins, weak but many. Gnolls stand watch to the south. We need to eliminate both camps, so take your pick. You go one way, and I'll go the other. Burn down their camp to signal your progress, and I'll do the same. Tarek pulls something from his pocket and tosses it to you. We'll need this at the gate. We have now earned our first discovery card. We'll reveal discovery card 65. We now can use items. In each location that we have this option, it says use an item. We can choose to use the item that we have, paying any sort of fatigue cost that we need, which we'll see in a second. And then we read the appropriate entry from the book itself. How you know what entry to read is you would look at your location. So for an example, we're at location A, and then whatever that item number is, so this one's 65, we'd go to A65 and read what it is. Here we have the item of Bluestone Fireball. You can see here it costs 1 fatigue to activate it. What that means is each player would have to take one of these tokens and put it into their fatigue box equal to whatever number that is in order for us to activate it in that location. So for an example, if we want to see what that Bluestone Fireball will do at the Burlin Prairie, we would each spend a fatigue and then read the appropriate entry. How fatigue works in this game is actually really cool. So your health here is 18. If ever the fatigue in this box is equal to 18, we are exhausted. If we're all exhausted, that's how death occurs. What we're going to be doing throughout the game is we may gain fatigue from the supply, or we may actually use our stats and put those tokens here into the fatigue box as well. So it's really cool how he does that, and it makes for a really fun and interesting experience. All right, Tass, what do you want to do? Do you want to check out what this fireball is going to do in this location?
Yeah, let's see what it does. Hopefully we don't explode it on ourselves.
This means that we'll both place 1 token in our fatigue spot to show that we're using a little bit of our stamina to be able to check out what this Bluestone Fireball can do in our location. If you have either the keywords alarm or clear, we'd go to A2. Otherwise, we'll keep reading. To Tarek's alarm, you casually begin to uncork the blue potion. Not here, he cries, grabbing your hand to stop you. Any exposure to the air and the fireball will explode, which would be very loud and could easily kill us. Let's try to stay quiet and alive. Save the fireball for the gate. So aka it's telling us we're not going to check out what that fireball does in other locations until we get to the gate. Kind of cool how he does that. So now we could use another item, but we don't have any other items. So the only other thing we can do is move to another location. We have 2 different locations we can go to. We can check out the Gnoll camp and try and take that one down, or the Goblin camp. So during our last play when we played this, we went to the Goblin camp, right?
We did, yeah.
I think this time, let's try and go to the Gnoll camp. So we're going to move along this to move towards the Gnoll camp, and we hit an encounter token. We're going to reveal it, and we can see it says it's a 2. That means now we'll go to the Book of Encounters, and whoever is not reading the storybook has control of the encounter book and will read the encounters. So since I did the storybook at first, Monica will do the encounter book now.
So since we are in Adventure 1 and Colin flipped Random Encounter 2, we're going to read the entry Adventure 1-2. It instructs us, now that you found the entry that matches your encounter token, remove that token from the adventure map and return it to the box. So if we decide to move back and forth on the map some more, we won't have another encounter here. By the faint light of the crescent moon, you make your way through a grove of ancient trees. You discover a thin line of twine running across your path and up a tree, where rusty pots and pans hang from the branches. The forest around you is laced with these tripwires. Any false move will alert the Dragul to your presence.
Yeah, you know who's going to be really clumsy?
Colin.
It's going to be me. A soothsayer is not good at walking around. Oh boy.
So since we have a trap here, we can either try to disarm the trap, which is going to take dexterity and intelligence, or we could carefully sneak through it, which would take our dexterity and our wisdom.
Well, I'll tell you right now, my dexterity is a whopping 0, so I'll be super helpful there.
Great, that's in both of them, Colin.
I know. I told you. Tripwires? What are tripwires? But my wisdom did get downgraded because I'm slightly haunted, so I'd prefer the intelligence disarming the trap. How about you?
That sounds like you're just expecting me to do it all.
That sounds about right. So does that sound good to you?
Well, we could try.
All right, so we're going to try and disarm the trap. So we'll move to Adventure 1-5.
You attempt to carefully sever and secure the various tripwires here in the forest so that no pots or pans fall from the trees. Here it indicates which skill check we will do. It'll be a Thiefcraft 1. And if we pass, we are able to disarm the trap. And if we fail, Colin, we trigger the alarm.
Why is it always me? Here we have our skill checks for Thiefcraft. Now you can see there's level 1 all the way to level 4. And when you are going through the campaign, the difficulties will increase as you also level up, which is really cool. I love how we did that. We are only at level 1 right now, thank goodness. What we're trying to do is roll. When we roll up our dice into our dice pool, we want a black 6, a blue 6, and a black or a blue 6. If we can completely fill this spot with our dice roll, which by the way, the max amount of dice we can roll for this is 4. So with 4 dice, get 3 6s. We will then complete this specific skill check and we pass it. Otherwise, we fail it. You only get one chance with skill checks. Now these blue tokens underneath here is XP. So if we are able to cover or complete these spots, even if we fail the check, we'd still gain the XP for these ones. So we'd like to prioritize these if possible. We've just completed the setup for our skill check. Now we move to building our dice pool. Remember, we can have a total of 4 dice. We could just randomly grab from the bag 4 dice and roll them up. However, very likely we're not going to get 2 black and 1 blue, right? I mean, that's just not likely. So what we can do instead is we can spend stamina to add specific dice. So each die costs stamina equal to the player count from that attribute row for that color. For an example, if we wanted to ensure that we would roll a blue die, I could spend 2 stamina from my intelligence row, put it into my fatigue row, and that would mean now we would for sure roll 1 blue die. We can also do that where I spend 1 from my intelligence row and Monica spends 1 from hers. It just has to be 2 in total. Conversely, let's say we really needed a red and I don't have any strength and let's say Monica was out of it. You can always spend 3 from anywhere else and any combination of any of your other stats to convert it into 1 of the die type you wanted. So I could do 3 from Constitution to get 1 of the 2 that we needed for strength, so to speak.
So in order for Colin to get a red die, he would have to spend, for example, 3 Constitution plus 3 of something else to get the 2 required cubes for his red die.
And if I was playing solo, I would only have to spend these 3 because there's only 1 player. Versus if I'm playing with 4 players, I need to spend a heck of a lot more. So you can see with more players comes more flexibility of stats, but it also comes with more cost to get specific dice for your dice pool. After you've spent stamina to get the amount of dice that you want, you will then add dice randomly from the bag until you get to the total value of the dice pool itself, which is 4 for this test. After we generate our dice pool and roll up our dice, we will have our opportunity to play the cards in our hand. So this is where our hand comes into play. And remember that each of us have a play limit of 2. We can each play 2 cards and affect that the dice pool after it's been rolled. So in my hand, I have different ways to make dice, let's say white or green, which is super unhelpful for this specific test. But Monica over here has loyal, which she can change any colored die into a blue or a purple die. So I don't know about you, Monica, but I'm thinking that we might want to go for 1 blue and 1 black and then do 2 random dice. What do you think?
That sounds like a plan.
Okay, so I'll spend the 2 from intelligence if you're willing to spend 2 from dexterity, since I've got none. I am not dexterous. So that means from this bag, we'll grab 1 blue and 1 black, which is great. And then what we'll do is we'll just randomly grab from this bag 2 more dice, and we get another blue and a black. Wow, that's kind of ridiculous. Now Monica will give our dice pool a roll, and let's see. I want to see just tons of sixes. That's what we're looking for. Sixes across the board. I see absolutely no sixes.
Oops.
So we've got a 1, 3, a 3, and a 4. So now we can see from the cards in our hand, what can we do to maybe change those?
So the first card I want to play is the Sense Evil card, which allows me to flip either a red or a black die. Since we have a black 1, and I know the opposite side of it is a 6, that gets us the black 6 for our skill check.
1 down, 2 to go, Monica. Nice. I also have a similar card, this Subvert, but it's only for green or red dice, so I'm not sure I'm going to be able to use that here.
I have the ability to do it for 2 blues, but that would just get us another 3 and a 4.
So I think I'm going to try playing Cursed Ring. This allows me to re-roll any colored die, but you see this symbol up here? That symbol states that this card is put in the spent space. So at the end of this skill check, any of our discarded cards will put back into our hand and we can use during our next skill check or our next combat. Anything spent will be spent until we do a rest. What do you think, Monica? Should I go for a blue or a black? Probably the blue, right?
Because, I have a way to add a black, so...
Oh, yeah, that's right. So let me give this one a roll, and I get a 3. That's super unhelpful.
Exactly what it was before.
Well, you know, I love re-rolling dice. This will be my second card play, but I'll try the Mystic Gambison. That allows me to re-roll a blue die. And what's cool about armor, so if you remember the basic role-player game, you wanted to collect sets of armor. So if I had more Mystic Armor cards, I could actually play more of those cards, and it wouldn't count as additional plays, because we each can only play 2 cards. But I'm going to play this to reroll that blue die. And don't forget, that card is not a spent card, so after this skill check, we'll be able to put that back into my hand. We'll roll this up, and that's a 6! That's awesome. That's 2 out of the 3.
Okay, now I can either re-roll a black die, or I can just add a new black die to the pool. What do you think would be better?
Maybe re-roll it first, and then we can use the bonus play potentially to add 1 in, and you can roll it in, we can pray for a 6.
That sounds like as good as planning as any. So just as Colin did with his armor card, I have the ability to do mine with a black or a pink, so I'm going to re-roll that black die. Ooh, a 5. Hey, I can increase a black or purple die by 1. So I've used my 2-card limit, but we do have a bonus play, and so in order to play the Unholy Flail and increase that black 5 to a black 6, I have to spend the bonus play, and then I can play this card.
Now what happens with this bonus play is it will be placed into your spent space, just like one of your spent cards, and we'll get it back when we do a rest action. So not only were we able to complete the check, we also gained 2 additional XP, giving us 4 XP. And I'm going to tell you right now, when we have done our regular play of this game, we totally failed this, so we're very happy that we passed that.
Colin was very clumsy.
Yeah, thanks for that.
We passed the Thiefcraft 1 skill check, and we disarmed the trap, which then brings us to Adventure 1-13. With a bit of know-how and a lot of elbow grease, you disarm the trap and move forward without fear of alerting the Dragul camp. You hope that the rogue is having as much luck on his side of the lake. Now we record the keyword clear. Tarek is handling his side of the lake. Remove the other encounter token from the adventure map and return it to the box. And then we continue at Adventure 1-14. Before heading toward the camp, you take a moment to catch your breath. The crescent moon reflects eerily off the glossy black surface of the water. So now we have our first chance to rest, and this is going to be the best way for us to heal that fatigue, as well as get our bonus token back.
When you do the rest action, you'll flip over your rest token to say you cannot rest again until you do at least another skill check or another combat. That way you can't cheat the way you're doing your resting, because how you decide how to rest is you look at how much XP you have. You have to spend at a minimum of 1. You can spend more XP to roll more dice and hopefully remove more fatigue that's in your fatigue box. We only have 3 fatigue each, so I think spending 1 XP is just fine. That means we'll each roll 1 die and heal by that amount. So I'll do a green die since I'm green, and Monica is black, so let's grab her a black die, and we'll each roll those up. We'll also grab our bonus play token and put it here again. And I was the only one that played a spent card, so that will go into my hand again with all of my other cards. Monica already had the other ones in her hand. We'll give our dice a roll, and I have a 1, and Monica's a 2. So with me having a 1, I only removed 1 fatigue. Well, that was terrible. So I have 2 left, and Monica's removing 1 or 2 from her, so she has 1 left. The final thing you'll do is on your board, With the stamina tokens that you have here, you'll reset your board with all your tracks. So I will put 2 there on my intelligence, and for Monica, she was able to place 2 back onto her dexterity. I do want to mention that during that skill check, we could have each used our abilities as well. It just ended up that we didn't need to, but that is something that we could have done. We've snuck ourselves into the Knoll camp, and now what we'll do is we'll switch roles. So now I will have the encounter deck, or the encounter book, and Monica will read from the story. So since we are at location C, she'll open up the storybook to C.
As you saw before, we start at the top and we do the action indicators from top to bottom. We start with if there is no XP at this location, but there is. So then we collect the XP from this location, and then we check these keywords. Do we have goblin? We do not. Do we have alarm? We do not.
We did last time.
Yeah, we did. We have the keyword clear. That's what we got from the previous skill check, and so we continue reading. 3 dog-faced creatures huddle around a single campfire. You approach downwind but smell no roasting meat. A hungry gnoll is a vicious foe, so you approach from behind in the space of their own shadows. Your iron strikes one down and then another before the last can get to their feet. She snarls at you and pulls a burning branch from the fire, waving it wildly to defend herself. Now we have our first combat, and we're going to have a cornered gnoll, and the 21 indicates where to find the card. We can either drive her away from the camp if we're victorious, or if we're defeated, we will have to set fire to the camp to escape.
Let's not get defeated, shall we? Here we have our cornered gnoll. Now, the cornered is a modifier, and that's what's really cool about this game is he's got all these modifiers that you can add to the enemy types. So you can actually be fighting 2 enemies, each with different modifiers. It provides lots of unique combinations, which is fun. What we need to do is complete all 3 of these dice slots within 3 rounds. At the end of each round, for the time that the gnoll is not defeated, any of the negative effects here that are not covered, as well as the negative effect of the next spot on the round track, will take effect. We can see here the cornered ability says, at the start of this skill check or each round of combat, add a random die to the dice pool. This does not count against the dice limit. So this is actually helping us since we surprised them. I'm assuming that if we had been as loud as I was expecting us to be, we would not have cornered. It would be something different. But we get a benefit because we surprised them in combat. So normally, our combat dice limit is 3. We're actually going to get a random 4th die. We'll roll that in, and then we can do the same thing we did with our skill checks, or our skill check we just did, where we can play up to 2 cards each. The catch is that between rounds, we're not going to be able to grab cards from our discard or our spent space. So if I play a card, I'm not going to be able to use it for the next round against that gnoll until we defeat the gnoll. So we can see here we want a green 1, we want a blue or a red 2, and a white 2. Oh, I should explain these items. So any of these spots that are not filled, the left side symbol is a counterattack, and this is where we would all together have to add fatigue into, or I should say stamina, into the fatigue box equal to the number. So if this spot wasn't filled, we'd each take essentially 2 damage. However, these spots, if we do fill them, we gain 1 XP. That's what that symbol is on the right side. Looking at my hand, I have a way to turn any die to green, so I feel like we don't need a green. I actually could change any... No, that's it, actually. I can change any die to green or white. That's my honest card, because I'm a definite honest Bexar Bastia. What about you? What can you do?
I could certainly change any die to a blue.
So that would mean maybe we should get 1 white. If we can, that would be wisdom. Maybe we each spend 1 white and we go for the rest of them random.
Or you use your card to turn it green, or turn it white and we get a green because you're stronger there.
That's true, except for my Soothsayer ability. It'd be kind of nice to have 2 stamina in green because I can only use it if I have stamina in the green spot. So if you're okay with it, I'd prefer white. Are you all right with that?
Sounds good to me.
All right, so we'll each spend 1 fatigue. That means we for sure will have 1 white. Then, normally we'd only grab 2 more dice, but because they are, what was it, cornered? Is it cornered? We get +1 die. So we have 2, a purple one, a red one.
Those are not the right colors.
No, they're not. And the 4th one, a red one. Oh boy. All right, let's see what happens. We'll give our dice a good roll, and we've got a white 3 at least, which of course we need a white 2, so that's kind of useless.
Well, maybe not useless. Let's see what we can do with it.
I'm going to play honest here. We can change any colored die into a white die. We'll replace that red 1 with a green 1, and we'll place that onto our knoll. So we've at least dealt him 1 of the 3 damage that we need.
Similarly, I can change that purple 2 into a blue 1, which we also need.
That means we have 2 out of the 3 dice that we need to complete this attack against the knoll. We have this 3, the white 3. Do we have any way to decrease it by 1?
I really can't affect the white die, but what I could do is use my class ability. This allows me to draw and roll a random die and then place it in my fatigue box. I can exchange then one of the dice in the pool for that die. Hopefully I can grab a white die out of this huge bag of dice.
And happen to roll a 2, because that's what we would need.
Yeah, you want to know the probability of this?
0, but I'm still believing in you. So draw one up. What'd you draw? A green. Well, we'll give it a roll. It's in your fatigue box, and it's going to be super helpful. It's a 3, which is not helpful at all. So she'll put that there to be used later. She will then have to flip that class ability over, and she will not get that back until we rest. I've got this cursed ring. I used it last time for a reroll. Let's reroll that white die. Remember, though, that's a spent card, so I will not get it back until we rest. Come on, 2. That's definitely a 5, not a 2.
Can you flip a white die? That would be a 2.
I can flip a red and a green. Would that be helpful?
No.
Okay. All right. Then I think we're just going to have to deal with this one round of combat. Since we were unable to defeat that knoll in that first round, we're going to take a counterattack of 3 fatigue. That means we're going to take 3 stamina and put it into our fatigue box, and that's for each of us. Then we're also going to place 1 more fatigue, so 4 total, because we're moving to the next round. We are, though, going to gain 1 XP because we did complete this die spot. And then we're going to do a second round against this knoll. So we can once again spend any of our stamina from our stats to gain specific dice, draw up to 4 because once again they're still cornered, and give them a roll. So I think it's pretty clear, Tass, we need a white, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I have a wisdom now of 0. So what I can do is I can spend 1 charisma and 2 intelligence, but it's really hitting my fatigue. But remember, I have 18 health. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I still have 8 health left. But if I spend those 3, that counts as 1 white. And then if you spend 1 from your wisdom, that's the second white, and that will give us 1 white die. Then we can grab the remaining 3 randomly. We grabbed our 1 white die here. I'm going to grab from the bag 3 more dice, and we have another white. Okay, we have 2 chances. Come on, white 2. Let's see it. Oh, we've got a white 2. That's perfect. That's all we need. We've now completed all the die slots on the knoll, which means we do not need to move to the next round. We take no negative effects. We gain 1 more XP. That's our 6th XP, and let's move to the storybook.
Victory is ours! So we drive her away from the camp, and we go on and continue to read at C3. The gnolls retreat from your blades and flee back toward their homeland in the north. As they run, you set fire to their tents. By the light of the burning camp, you find something the cowards left behind. We get our second discovery card 86. And what is that? The lodestone pendant. I wonder what that's going to be used for.
The nice part about this item is it doesn't cost us any fatigue to use it, so we can check it out anywhere we want.
We also record the keyword gnoll, and we can also, since we had a combat, flip our rest token back over. Another fire rises from across the lake. You trust that Tarek is making good progress and will meet you at the fortified gate ahead.
When you have more than one item, you can actually combine them in certain locations if you'd like. Now I'm going to tell you right now, we're probably not going to be combining our bluestone fireball until we get to that wall, because we know we need to explode something there. So we're not going to do that here. How that works, though, is you're going to take the 2 numbers of those items as well as the location and try and find that entry in the book. If there's one there, then that means that you can do that. You have to spend the stamina, of course, and then read that entry as indicated. So what do you think, Monica? Do you want to use an item? Do you want to rest or move to another location?
Well, you know what, Colin? I kind of want to see what happens if we use them together.
Really? What if we lose the fireball?
It's the first scenario. I don't think they'll make us do that.
Let's hope not. So because the bluestone fireball has 1 fatigue on there, you can see that, we each have to place another stamina. Now this is coming from the supply, so it's not coming from our actual stats, but it's coming from the supply and it's going into our fatigue box. That means I only have 7 health left, and I don't know, Monica, how much health do you have left?
I have 8 stamina in my fatigue box. That is half of my health.
Oh, you're fine then, you're fine.
Okay, let's see what happens. So we go to C6586, since those are the 2 numbers of our 2 items. Finding no use for these items together, you decide to play a game. See, I just wanted to play a game, Colin. You hang the bluestone fireball from the chain of the lodestone pendant and whirl it around over your head. Not sure this is a good idea. Then you hurl the fireball into the air as high as you can, catching it again before it hits the ground. Fortunately, you are good at playing catch, so you do not explode yourself in the middle of the null encampment. When your game is over, you feel reinvigorated. Each player add 1 stamina to your strength attribute row from the supply, ignoring the usual limit.
I will honestly say I was not expecting that. That actually worked.
You're welcome.
Who would have thought we'd be so good at catching things? So what that means is we'll place each of these stamina tokens in our strength row, which of course mine is 0, so normally I would be at 0. Monica can actually exceed her limit of 3 and puts 4 there in total.
See, it's useful to be an idiot every once in a while.
Yeah, sometimes, that's making me think. Okay, since we're here, why don't we use the lodestone pendant here on its own and see what we get, because that takes no fatigue, so we can just read C86.
The lodestone pendant is expertly made, its magnetic stone carved into a smooth shape. When you hold it by its chain, the pendant sways gently, responding perhaps to its invisible attraction to nearby metal, or perhaps to subtle motions of your hand. If you had something else to hang it from, you could get a clearer signal of its attraction to metal. Well, we know we probably shouldn't be hanging it from the bluestone fireball, so that means maybe there'll be another item that we'll get somewhere. We don't really have any other items to use, so let's rest.
I'm totally with that. What do you say about using 2 XP this time, or should we just use 1? So the hard part, you guys, is if we use 2 XP and we don't gain that back, we're gaining less to level up our characters. We also don't want to die, so what do you think, 2?
Yeah, you've got quite a bit of fatigue over there.
Yeah, don't remind me. That also means, though, that I can place this cursed ring that was in the spent space and put it back into my hand.
And I can also reflip my seeker ability.
We'll roll up our dice. I'm green again. Oh, only 7?
Well,
you only have
better
4.
Than my 4.
That's terrible. So how much fatigue do you still have left?
I have 4 left.
Okay, I guess I have 4 left too. That's not bad. And we'll set up all of our stats as well. Don't forget though, whenever you rest, you also lose any excess that you have. So that strength that we just gained, we're going to lose, unfortunately. Now what we can do is move. Let's go ahead and move ourselves to that outpost. This means now I will read from the storybook. If you have the keyword open, we don't. If there's no XP at that location, there is. We're going to collect that XP, so that'll bring us back to having 4 XP, and we'll continue reading. You approach the fortified outpost as the moon sets, leaving you in utter darkness. Behind you, twin fires burn on either side of the shimmering black lake. You feel your way across the rough wood of the outpost's massive gate, but you can find no handle or latch. Yet the gate holds firm. It must be barred from within. Behind this wall, the Dragool are protecting a powerful artifact. Tarek Nalin, the halfling, is nowhere in sight. So we can now either use an item, rest, or move to another location. What do you think? Bluestone fireball, anyone? Do you want to do it?
Yeah.
So we're going to have to spend 1 fatigue, or 1 stamina. We'll place it into our fatigue box. That means we each have 5 fatigue. Let's read D65. You uncork the bluestone fireball at the base of the fortified gate and run for cover. A thunderous explosion tears a wide flaming hole in the wall, giving a passage through. The second action indicator below tells you to reveal a discovery card that is not an item. Some discovery cards will update your map. The bottom left corner of these cards indicate where they go on the adventure map. In this case, place the outpost interior, the discovery card 16, on map coordinates, you can see that circle, 4. Remember to add 1 XP to the new location from the supply as well. We now need to record the keyword open, reveal discovery card 16 and place an XP on it, and then return discovery card 65 to the discovery deck. Then what we can do is rest or move. What do you think about moving?
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, I think we're going to move right to that outpost. We just blew a hole into this wall, and now what we can do is move to the outpost interior. This will now mean Monica will have the storybook. Let's go ahead and read.
If you have the title Revealer of Secrets, we do not. If you have the title Rogue's Accomplice, we do not. If you have the title Aid to Ogre, we still do not. Otherwise, collect the XP from this location and continue reading. You pass through the smoldering hole and enter the Dragool outpost. Its massive wooden walls are solid but roughly constructed. They enclose an open space, empty except for a single chest of white metal and a gray-skinned ogre who stands before it with an iron club. The ogre shouts in the Dragool language. It's gibberish to you, as if he were making all the sounds, but none of the sense of Nalos Common. Between his angry cries, he smashes the metal chest with such force that it shakes the ground around you. but the chest only rings out a remarkably pleasant tone. It remains unbroken, undented, and firmly in place. Enraged, the ogre approaches you, shouting and swinging his club wildly. As you watch his outbursts, you catch a glimpse of something moving in the shadows behind him. Tarek Nowlin, blade drawn, carefully approaches the ogre from the other side of the outpost. We now have two options. We can either attack the ogre, or we can try to understand what he is saying.
Well, what do you think? What do you want to do with an ogre flailing its huge club? Do you want to try and understand that it's yelling at us, or do you want to just attack it? What do you want to do?
I think let's try and understand what he's saying.
I've got a little bit of intelligence and pretty much no wisdom. You have some wisdom and minimal intelligence. This is going to go great.
As Tarek creeps closer, you try to understand what the ogre is saying. Dragul and Nalos Common are not completely divorced. 1,000 years ago, when all of Ulos lived in peace, the two languages were a single tongue. But after all these centuries of separation, it is no simple task for you to comprehend the ogre's angry rants. We now have to try and interpret the ogre's angry rants, so we're going to do an Interpretation 1 skill check. And if we pass, we roughly understand the ogre's meaning. Otherwise, he grows really frustrated with us and attacks us anyways.
Let's see how we do. This skill check, we need a white, a blue, and a blue or a white. So I can get us a white, for sure. I can get us a green, which is useless. I can make a 5 any color, which is useless.
I can turn any dye blue, so that's helpful.
Okay, so I can turn any dye white, you can turn any dye blue. So why don't we get one that's either blue or white? Which one do you want to do?
I can affect more blue dyes.
Okay, if that's the case, let's do blue. I'll spend 1 from my intelligence. If you're willing to spend 1 from your intelligence, we'll put both of those into our fatigue. That means we're gaining 1 blue dye, and then we'll randomly draw 3 others. We have our 1 blue die here. Let's grab 3 other dice. The white is helpful. That's about it, though. We'll give them a roll. We've got lots of 5s and 6s, and we need a 1, a 4, and a 3. I feel like this is as good a time as any to use my Soothsayer ability. I can return 2 stamina from my Constitution attribute row to the supply. So that doesn't go to my fatigue box, it goes to the supply. I am then going to decrease all dice in the dice pool by 1. That means, though, my Constitution is going to go down to a 1 for now, but I'm okay with that, because decreasing all of these dice means that we now have the blue 4 that we need. This is now down to a 4, this is down to a 5, and this one is down to a 4. The first card I'm going to play is Subvert. It's going to allow me to flip over a red die. We'll go from having a red 5 to a red 2. Then let's be honest to this ogre and tell this ogre, you know what? We have no idea what you're saying. Slow down. We're going to change that die into a white die. A white 2 is just what we need for our skill test. So that's our second one done. We now just need a blue or white 3. I believe in you, Monica.
For my first card play, I'm going to play Loyal, which allows me to turn that green die into a blue die.
We're moving in the right track. I like that.
And then I can use my sling to decrease the 4 to a 3. Probably knocked the ogre on the side of the head, but that gets us the 3 that we need for our skill check.
Apparently, we should have been playing these 2 characters for our full campaign, Monica, because we haven't failed a skill test or a combat yet.
Yeah, we're doing pretty good.
2 more XP for us. And the other thing is, since we rested before, this was exhausted. Now, since we've done a skill check, we can rest again.
Paying careful attention to the ogre's speech, you can tell that he is angry about the chest and whatever is inside it. He introduces himself as Tog, and he tells you that the Dragul invasion was meant to bring home artifacts like this one at his feet. After all the death and suffering of this war, he has finally reached his mission's end, but he can neither move the chest nor open its lid. As he speaks, Tog enters into despair. His homeland is gone. The invasion has failed. And where will the Dragul go now? His are the complaints of an invader who killed many of your compatriots, and now is disappointed in his own losses at war. But your efforts to understand him have kept his attention fixed on you, allowing the halfling in back to creep ever closer to the ogre. A moment more, and Tog's life will be over. Oh, so do we warn him so that he can escape? Or wait and let Tarek do his work?
I don't love Tarek, so I'm all for saving the ogre. What do you say?
You never know when an ogre might come in handy if he's our friend.
So yeah, we'll read E9.
Look out, you cry. Tog is startled and leaps backward, knocking Tarek to the ground. When he sees that you have saved him from assassination, the ogre grunts his gratitude to you, climbs the wall of the outpost, and leaps into the darkness beyond. Tark stands and dusts himself off. Needless to say, I'm not impressed, he says. Warning an adversary of my attack is nigh treasonous. Nevertheless, your mission is accomplished. The ogre has fled, and we are here with the chest. You examine the area around the chest and find that the ogre left behind his cone purse. Ooh, we get to gain 4 gold.
Nice. We have 5 gold plus 4 more. We now have 9 beautiful gold.
And we also get title card 1.
Title card 1 is Aid to Ogre. At Blacklake, you spared the life of an ogre in the crosshairs of Tarek Nolan. This kindness will not be overlooked, neither by the ogre and nor by the halfling. Oh boy.
So it kind of sounds like we made friends with an ogre and not so much with Tarek.
And I don't feel bad about it.
So now we are instructed to decrease our king's favor, increase our Dragul favor, and then we have to check our keywords.
We'll move our king's favor from 0 to -1 and our Dragul favor up to 1. And these are going to affect the stories and the different characters that you meet and how they interact with you throughout the game. It's really fun, and I do think this provides the most replayability of the game itself. You can go different ways on these tracks to then have different experiences and different stories.
Checking our keywords, we go through these lists and find that the combo we have is null and clear, going to E15. Now that the outpost is calm, Tarek relaxes on a tree stump and carves slices from an apple. Allow me to compliment you, he says, on your stealthy approach to the Knoll camp. I heard no sound at all from your side of the lake. Not until I heard the Knolls screaming to their gods for mercy. Well done. Tarek points to the metal chest with an apple wedge. All that's left for me, he says, is to figure out what is locked inside. Upon closer inspection, you discover the white metal of the chest to be Dragolium, an ancient alloy forged to contain objects from other planes. No force will crack it. Its lid must yield to some other secret. You find a pear-shaped indentation above its keyhole. Tarek notices your interest in the chest. You can return to your regiment now if you like. Or you can stay and help me open it. Your mission here is complete, leaving you free to explore the area at your leisure. Are there parts of the lake you have not yet visited or items you have not yet found a use for? From now on, when a choice indicator gives you the opportunity to move to another location, you may instead turn to the final section of the storybook titled The End.
We have this tasty looking goblin camp we could go to, but I think I'm going to stop the video here. I'd like to have you all enjoy the experience of seeing this game on your own. It is absolutely phenomenal, so much fun, but I don't want to spoil too much. You can assume that we need to do something with this pear-shaped item, but we don't know exactly how it's going to work with that Dragolium chest. So let's just assume that we have now completed our adventure and we have read the end scenario. Let's talk quick about how you level up your character, and then we'll end our video. Once you've completed an adventure, you'll prepare a market, shuffle each of the 5 market decks, the armor, weapons, skills, traits, and scrolls, not the familiars. You can only get familiars at certain spots in the story. I love familiars, they're awesome. You'll reveal the top card of each of those decks and place them face up. They'll have a cost, just like the cards that we have in our decks here. You can see a cost of 6, and if you're a halfling, you can actually get a discount for this one, so it'd only be 4. This one, it would reduce the cost by your constitution, so you can see you have those effects just like you have in Role Player, the game itself, which is kind of cool. You also are able to sell any of the cards that you have in your hand, and you can sell any of those at 2 gold apiece. Then you can use XP to do all these different advancements. You can either increase a character's health by 1, increase the party limit's combat dice by 1, so remember we were rolling 3, we could actually roll 4, increase the party's bonus play limit by 1, or increase the party's mastery level. And mastery level is how you increase your attributes. You can always save XP from scenario to scenario, same with gold. After you've done all that, so let's say we've used all but 1 of our gold, we'd mark 1 gold here, and let's say we'd used all but 1 XP, we could put 1 here, or we had 2, we'd saved 2 XP. We'd also mark the locations on here where we have our specific favor, so we know where to start next time. We'd make sure to update any play limits, combat limits, or bonus plays. And then finally, you would erase all the keywords, and also mark on the campaign track which scenario you completed. And that's it. You also, I should mention, take all the discovery cards and put them back in the deck. So you don't keep these items from scenario to scenario. You get new items for each scenario. Don't forget, though, that all titles that you earn, you will keep from scenario to scenario. So right now, Monica and I have, I don't know, like 35 different ones. Look at all of these titles. These are all the titles that we have, and we're on chapter 7, I think. So yeah, you get lots of them, and they are super fun, and it's a great way to have things that affect you from previous stories in a current adventure. I love it. So there you have it. That was Role Player Adventures. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let us know if you'd like to see a campaign on the channel, and let us know in the comments below if you're enjoying this game as well. And thanks to Monica for joining us. It's been a while since you've been on a video.
Yeah, not a problem. It's my pleasure.
Finally, make sure to check out Mike's review of the game. I'll put a link for that in the description below. And as always, we'll catch you at the next stop.